What's going on, guys? Today we're going to do a super simple and straightforward breakdown of which one of these stocks, AMD, Sandisk, or Light, which is Lumentum, makes the most sense to buy right now. They're all three some of the most hyped up stocks, and so of course, they're not really my strategy. My strategy involves buying large cap stocks while they're in dips, like what I'm doing with Oracle, and like what I've done with like 50 other stocks, including AMD, when I bought AMD for only $70 last year. And like what we just did with Robinhood, we bought this back in April at $71. Now it is $112, $113 stock. That's after pulling back. It went to 120, and we just did that with Figma in the Discord. Jake alerted this one. He alerted down here in the $17 range. Now within 1 week, it's already pushing the 20s. So it hit 23.40. It's pulled back a little bit, but I think that, according to analysts, this stock has crazy upside. I think that we'll see $30 relatively soon, maybe more like 40 or 50, depending on how much the market shifts and the sentiment changes on this stock specifically. Because just like some of the previous stocks, like Figma that I've just IPO'd and pulled back a lot, Figma could really start rallying. So let's talk about AMD, Sandisk, and Lumentum, because at some point I will want to add one of these stocks to my portfolio. They're extremely volatile. There are opportunities for sure. And right off the bat, I want to just show you guys that AMD, out of these three, has the least amount of upside. Analysts actually don't expect this stock to go up at all within the next 12 months, which is never bullish. Like, why would you buy into a stock that's up a lot when analysts don't see it going up any further? And usually analysts are giving pretty high outlooks, right? Like with Sandisk, even when it was at like 2,300, there was still a pretty high outlook. But with AMD, just doesn't look like there's much room to grow here. And you have to consider this stock is now almost $1 trillion. It takes a whole lot more money to move this than before when it was only a $70 stock when I was buying last year. It's completely different. Kind of like Intel. It's another stock I bought at $20. Now it's basically $120. So it added another $100 to the stock price. Now it takes a lot more money to move these. Sandisk has some upside. So Sandisk, and all of them are going to report great earnings. We'll run through those next. But Sandisk has 37% expected upside. It's expected to go actually pretty close to where it peaked, which is still a huge, huge move back up. I actually just shorted Sandisk, so I made a ton of money on the way down. I alerted this and made in just 2 days 50%. But we closed out of that, and Sandisk could actually be a buy pretty soon, because if analysts think it's going to get back up to where it was around before dipping, that's always a good sign because it's just up so much. So the fact that analysts and there's a ton documenting this stock, the fact that they're bullish on it getting back up is very interesting. So I'm going to be looking at this stock. AMD, I think, even though we'll go through the earnings real quick, even though they're expecting record-breaking earnings again, which is a huge deal, it just doesn't have much upside. So we'll look at Sandisk's earnings here. Sandisk is, of course, expecting record-breaking revenue because, their stock chart, they've got a lot more cash, they've got a lot more deals, their price-to-sales ratio is actually pretty low, even though the stock is up so much. And then Lumentum, this one with actually the most potential upside, this one has 62% upside, expected to break $1,000, is also expected to report record-breaking earnings. Basically, if you don't know this, and I charted it here, NVIDIA just invested $2 billion into them. What I thought is interesting about the setup right now is that we're basically at this same price that NVIDIA invested $2 billion into them, and since then, obviously, it did extremely well. If you bought in, you would have made a ton of money on this move up, going all the way up to $1,000. So analysts think it's going to go right back up there. And basically, because of NVIDIA's investment, because of the much higher price target, and because their EPS and revenue are actually somewhat in line with what makes sense according to the sales they're getting, and not just because, oh, they're getting more cash because investors are buying in, I do think Lumentum is the play here as far as a hyped up growth stock that should keep making new highs. NVIDIA invested in them, you're buying in at the same price. I don't think it gets much better than this as far as buying a hyped up stock on a pullback. So I'm going to rule out AMD, and then Sandisk looks pretty good maybe in the near future. Maybe if it pulls under $1,000, then that could be a good investment opportunity. But for now, I think Lumentum, at least for this week, because of its price and where analysts expect it to be, and Nvidia's confidence in them with such a big, huge investment, not to mention $54 billion market cap. This is a much smaller market cap than the rest. AMD has an $840 billion market cap. Sandisk has a $240 billion market cap. Lumentum is a much smaller stock. If they get another deal, then this could send them easily to 1,000, I think, without much problem, and maybe to their price target pretty soon of course, almost 1,200, 1,132. That is a 62% gain. Guys, make sure to join the Discord. If I get into one of these stocks, I will absolutely alert it, but I just alerted 2 trades, so get in those before it's too late, because the last one did 50% and then kept going. So if you held, you'd be up like 70% now. But guys, subscribe and have a great day.